You know the ticket. User locked out. Access denied. Why? You open portal after portal, clicking through the same screens, trying to piece together an answer while the user waits. Now picture this. Ticket 4471, reset the password, random, secure, and revoke every session, all in one command. Ticket 4472, inventory every MFA method on the account, spot the rogue authenticator the attacker registered, and rip it out before they get back in. Ticket 4473, cross-reference intra-device records against Intune compliance in seconds, and tell Raj exactly why his phone won't connect. By the end, you'll have a playbook that turns every access panic into a 30-second fix. You're building a repeatable helpdesk triage playbook right now. If you want to take that automation further, Build Microsoft 365 Administration Agents shows you how to create AI agents that handle identity management, security investigations, and compliance reporting across Microsoft 365. It's a hands-on course using Microsoft Graph, Python, and Azure AI, with a full capstone project where you design a multi-agent administration platform. Check the link for details. We begin by setting up an identity that can sign in without a human, which is what makes any of this schedulable. First, you automate a password reset for David using getMgUser and updateMgUser, with getRandom to generate a secure credential. Next, you inventory Lena's registered authentication methods through getMgUser authentication method. You then remediate a rogue method by removing it with removeMgUser authentication phone method and locking down the session with revokeMgUser sign-in session. After that, you pinpoint Raj's actual device by combining getMgUser, getMgUser registered device, and getMgUser own device with select object. Finally, you check that device is in Intune compliance state using getMgUser own device, where object, and getMg device management manage device. You walk away with a set of scripts you can run on any tenant. Before any of this can be automated, the tenant needs an identity that a script can sign in as. We build that in code, because a course about automation should not start by asking you to click through a portal. By the end of this section, you will have an app registration, a service principal, and a connection that needs no human at all. We start by installing the Microsoft Graph module. This gives us the commands our helpdesk playbook will use, like getMgUser and updateMgUser. We scope it to the current user so we do not need administrator rights on the machine itself. We connect interactively with the scopes needed to create the app registration itself. Application.readWrite.all lets us register the application, and AppRoleAssignment.readWrite.all lets us grant consent. This is the only time we will click a sign-in prompt. We never guess a permission GUID. We look up the graph service principal and filter its app roles by name. The 4 permissions we need are the least privilege for our labs: resetting passwords, auditing MFA methods, and reading device and Intune compliance records. We register an application named Helpdesk Triage Automation and immediately create its service principal. The service principal is the identity that lives inside our tenant and can be assigned permissions. The application object is just the template. We create a client secret. In production, you would use a certificate, but a secret is simpler for a lab. Then we grant admin consent for each permission. This means no user will see a consent dialog when the script runs unattended later. We output the 3 pieces needed for unattended login: the application ID, the tenant ID, and the secret. The last line shows the exact connect-mg graph command the rest of the course will use. No interactive prompt, no consent dialog. That is automation. The script installs the module silently, then connect-mg graph prints its welcome line. New mg application returns the new app object, and we extract the app ID. The secret is displayed only once. We now have a service principal named Helpdesk Triage Automation with exactly the 4 permissions our labs need, and we can connect without any user interaction. Ticket 4471 is a classic Monday morning lockout, and the urgency is exactly what makes it dangerous. An attacker claiming to be David could have submitted this ticket hoping we'll hand over a password without checking. That's why our first move is identity verification through a channel the ticket itself doesn't control. We call the phone number already stored in the directory, not any callback number in the ticket body. Once we confirm it's really David, we issue a temporary password and immediately force a change on next sign in. That way, the password we generate is single use, and David ends up with a secret only he knows. Watch for the silent 204 response, no content means success, and be ready for the pitfall where a stale token can block you even with the right role. We'll retrieve David's user object with getMGUser, build a password profile with a random temporary password and force change password next sign in set to true, then push it with update mguser. Expect no output on success. First, getMGUser filters on David's user principal name to pull his full directory object, because we need the immutable ID for the update. Then we build a hash table called password profile with two keys. Password gets a random 4-digit number sandwiched between static strings, making it unpredictable but still meet complexity requirements. Force change password next sign in is set to true, which is the critical piece. It ensures the temporary password expires on first interactive use. Finally, update mguser targets David by his ID and passes the entire password profile hash table as the parameter value. And we get back absolutely nothing, no output, no error. That's the expected 204 no content response, which in REST APIs means the operation succeeded. David can now sign in with that temporary password, and the moment he does, he'll be forced to set a new one. If you instead saw insufficient privileges despite being a global admin, your token is likely stale from a session that predates a conditional access policy requiring fresh reauth for sensitive actions. Just run connect-ng graph again and retry. When an account is compromised, an attacker often registers their own authentication method, like a phone, so they can get back in later. That's why, before we reset anything or block access, we need a full inventory of every method currently on Lena's account. The challenge is that the generic getMGUser authentication method complete returns objects where the useful details, like a phone number, aren't top-level properties. They're buried inside a hash table called additional properties. If you try to read a property like phone number directly, you'll get nothing back, and a script could falsely report the account as clean. We're going to pull the list and then expand that hidden bag, so we can see exactly what's registered and spot anything that shouldn't be there. We'll look up Lena's user object, pull all her registered authentication methods, and then loop through them to reveal the contents of each additional property's hash table, where the real identifying details live. First, we get Lena's user object with getMGUser, filtering by her user principal name, and store it in a variable. Then we call getMGUser authentication method, passing in her unique ID as the user ID parameter, which returns every method registered to her account. Finally, we pipe those method objects into for each object and output just the additional properties property, which is where the phone number, app name, or key label is actually stored. Here we see three methods. The first is the Microsoft Authenticator app on Lena's iPhone. The second is a phone method, and the phone number ends in 9876. The third is a FIDO2 security key. The key takeaway is that the phone number is only visible because we expanded additional properties. If we had tried to access a phone number property directly on the method object, it would have returned null, and we might have missed a rogue number entirely. Now we have the full list to compare against what Lena says she owns. When an attacker adds their own phone as an MFA method, just deleting that method isn't enough. The session they already have stays alive because access tokens are short-lived and don't check back with the directory until they expire. That's the same gap we saw on the termination project. So we pair two actions, remove the rogue method so it can't be used again, then revoke all sign-in sessions so any active attacker session is forced to re-authenticate immediately. Without the removed method, that re-authentication fails. You'll watch for two things in the terminal, the silent success of the removal, and the boolean true from the revocation complete. We'll run remove mguser authentication phone method to delete the rogue method, then revoke mguser sign-in session to kill Lena's active sessions. The removal produces no output, and the revocation returns true. First, remove mguser authentication phone method targets Lena by her user ID and deletes the specific phone method we identified earlier using its phone authentication method ID. The complete is silent on success. Then revoke mguser sign-in session takes Lena's user ID and invalidates every refresh token she has right now. That means any device or session, hers or an attacker's, must re-authenticate on the next request. The removal produced no output, which means it succeeded. The revocation returned true, confirming that all of Lena's sessions are now invalid. If an attacker was sitting on a live session, their next action triggers a sign-in prompt, and without the rogue phone method, that prompt can't be satisfied. The two-step lockout is complete. When a ticket just says my phone, you need a real device identifier to take action. That means pulling both registered and owned device lists, because they answer different questions. Registered devices are ones where Raj's identity completed the enter, join, or register action. Owned devices are where his account is set as the device's owner attribute, typically the stronger signal for a personal phone enrolled through Intune. The pitfall is that a device can appear in one list and not the other, so searching only one can make it look like he has no phone at all. We'll pull both lists, then cross-reference the operating system to find the specific iPhone object ID we need for the next step. We'll retrieve Raj's user object, then call getMG user registered device and getMG user owned device. Both will return device entries, and by checking the additional properties we'll spot the iOS device that appears in the own list, giving us the Entra device ID to carry forward. First we store Raj's user object by filtering on his user principal name. Then we pipe his ID into getMG user registered device, selecting the ID and additional properties so we can see the operating system metadata. We do the same with getMG user owned device. Running both commands side by side lets us compare the two lists and find where they overlap for an iOS device. Both lists return entries. The registered devices show a Windows machine and an iOS device. The owned devices show only the iOS device. That's exactly the scenario we prepared for. The iPhone appears in both lists, but the owned list confirms it's genuinely his personal device. We now have the Entra device object ID, 87654321-4321-4321-4321 ready for the next step. Raj's phone is blocked, but his laptop works fine. That pattern screams conditional access. The policy likely demands a compliant device for mobile access, so we need to check the phone's compliance state in Intune. But here's the catch, the Entra device object we found earlier has one ID, and Intune uses a completely different internal ID for the same device. They're linked by a shared property called Azure AD Device ID. We'll bridge those two records to pull the real compliance status. Watch for a non-compliant state and a stale last sync time. That combination explains exactly why the phone is rejected while the laptop sails through. We'll grab the iOS device's Entra device ID, then feed it into getMG device management managed device using a filter on Azure AD Device ID. The output will show us the device name, compliance state, operating system, and last sync time. First, we pull Raj's own devices, filter for iOS, and extract the device ID from the additional properties. That gives us the Entra device identifier. Then we call getMG device management managed device with a filter that matches on Azure AD Device ID, using that extracted value. We select device name, compliance state, operating system, and last sync date time so we can see exactly what Intune thinks about this phone. There it is. One managed device record, iOS, compliance state non-compliant, and the last sync was several days ago. That stale sync means the device hasn't checked in to confirm it meets policy, exactly the kind of state a device compliance conditional access rule would block. His laptop, being hybrid Entra joined and compliant, never hits that block. And notice, if we'd forgotten to add the device management managed devices.read.all scope, this command would have returned absolutely nothing, silently looking like the phone wasn't enrolled at all, when the real problem was just a missing permission. We move through 3 real tickets, automating password resets, authentication method audits, and device identification with compliance checks. You saw how getMG user, update MG user, remove MG user authentication phone method, and the device let's turn a manual helpdesk call into a repeatable script. The single most useful thing to carry away is that before you open a portal blade, ask yourself if the task can be a PowerShell function, because in Access Triage the answer is almost always yes.